joint defense pact with Egypt.
Sounds lovely. Sean, what did you gather from Egypt?
The Soviet Union told the Egyptians that the Israelis were amassing troops. This made the Egyptians amass their own troops, but then the Egyptians found out that the Israelis had not really amassed troops, and then the Egyptians, instead of falling back, the president didn't want to look weak, and so he started upping his rhetoric about wanting to fight the Israelis. And then he closed the Straits of Tiran, which was a big issue, and that made Israel mad. And then after a couple of agreements like the Jordan-Egypt partnership and Iraqi tanks up on the border, Israel decided it was going to attack before it got attacked, and then all hell broke loose.
Okay, so it's a very excellent and thorough summary. It sounded a little bit longer than 3 sentences. Mark, do you have a shorter way to say that?
My answer is pretty close to what Sean said, but
So
We
it's
had
a
long readings
complicated
though. We had
situation.
longer readings though, Ms. B. So,
You did, but I did ask you to write a 3-sentence.
Ms. B, what's the purpose of a 3-sentence one if I was correct?
We were discussing things quickly because we have a limited amount of time. So,
Okay.
but thank you for your inquiry. Mark, do you have?
I have 3 sentences.
Okay.
I guess you better.
At least I follow directions.
Let's hear.
The Egyptian leader received false reports about Israel attack being imminent rather than withdraw forces of mass and not wanting to lose face. Nasser proceeded to gain support for action by joining with Jordan. The closure of the Straits of Tiran was dividing line to war.
Okay. So we've got an alliance was formed against Israel. We've got some amassing of arms on both sides. Rachel, what's something we can draw from? Syria you had?
Yeah, I had Syria. Israel tapped the water sources by building canals, so Syria began a diversion plan at the river so Israel couldn't get any of the water. For years, Israel saw both military and terrorist attacks at its borders, and then Israel would plow through the DMZ, and Syria responded by killing civilians at the Hula Valley.
I'd like you guys to all flip over the paper that I gave you. It has a map of this region. Look mainly at the map on the left side. So you can see the countries that you were just talking about. They basically surround Israel. Lebanon is the only other country that wasn't really involved in this. So there were agreements between countries on either side of Israel. There was issues with the water systems and arguments over that, and there was this increased, basically an arms race between Israel and all of these countries. And so it got to the point in June of '67 where all of Israel's borders were surrounded by enemy forces, and they felt they had no choice but to attack. So Israel's Air Force, all but 12 planes, they left over Israel to guard their nation. The rest of their fleet went out and bombed the air forces in Egypt, Jordan, Syria, and Iraq. So they prevented an aerial counterattack to what they had just done. It took 5 more days of infantry and artillery battle, and the war was ended, and Israel accomplished its military goals. Then, as you can see based on the map on the right-hand side, Israel's area expanded from 8,000 square miles to 26,000 square miles. So, we're going to get to the homework in a second, but I want you to take a moment to consider these 2 maps. What observations and conclusions can you draw from them?
First of all, I'm impressed that they achieved their military objectives when they were totally surrounded and little.
It's an excellent observation. If we had more time, I would go more in depth into their military procedures. The main
Just
point is to
wondering
think
what the
of
colors are. The
if
darker brown is.
all the other countries. The paler, the beige color is Israel.
So Samaria and Judea got completely eliminated.
That land came under Israeli control. But what does that mean for the people living in that land? Could I get some observations from Mark or Sean?
Well, it seems to me that there's a lot of people who just all of a sudden, after 6 days a week ago, they were one country and now they're absorbed into another.
So just as the creation of the state of Israel was a huge problem because it was just carved out of all of these other countries, Israel has just expanded that problem by making their country bigger and carving out even more chunks from these other countries. And that doesn't mean that the people within that new land want to be a part of Israel, and it doesn't mean they're going to agree. And so there's a lot of conflicts within Israel. And your homework is actually going to be not this. I changed my mind. Cool. Yeah, so just as a connection to current events, I want you guys to kind of think about what's going on in the world today or over time throughout this period. We're going to continue to study the conflicts that have arisen with Israel in the Middle East and all of the different tensions between the various countries. But your homework, going back to that, is the sentence says, most scholarly accounts of the crisis attribute the drift to war to an escalation that was unwanted. However, despite a desire to avoid war on all sides, everyone was in the end responsible for making the escalation unavoidable. You each had a country that you focused on the escalation and the tension between the two nations. I want you guys to consider that viewpoint and think of steps that could have been taken to avoid this war. So, for your homework, just go home, ponder that, be ready to either write about it or discuss it tomorrow morning.
Okay.
And everyone's taken note of their homework?
Sure.
So we can write or take notes? Or prepare to discuss?
We're just going to be handling this material tomorrow morning. So, whatever is easiest for you.
Mm-hmm.
If you need to go through it, like writing it down, think through it that way. If you can process it in your head and hold on to it, that is fine. Just make sure you know that this is the homework. Take note in your head or in your notebooks.
Okay.
Okay. I don't want anyone saying they forgot. I'm giving you this opportunity to remember. Does anyone have any questions or things that need to be clarified from what we talked about today? All right, then have a lovely day.
Thank you, Miss B.
Thank you.
All right, give her a round of applause. All right. Let's talk about